Hello, sleepy soul. The night is quiet, the world is asleep, and something is waiting in the dark. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and write your country and current time in the comments. Now listen carefully. Have you ever looked at something in your own house and thought, that wasn't there before, but your brain immediately tries to make it normal? That's what happened to me with the sleeping bag. For a long time, I told this story like it was just some weird sleepover thing that got out of hand. Something my friends and I exaggerated because we were tired, because it was late, because we'd been watching scary movies and eating junk food until our stomachs hurt. But the truth is, there are parts of that night I still don't understand. And there are parts one understands too well. My name is Caleb. I was 18 when this happened, living in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. Not the kind of place where anything dramatic really happened. Our neighborhood was mostly split-level houses, trimmed lawns, basketball hoops and driveways, and dads who mowed their lawns at 8 in the morning on Saturdays like it was a competitive sport. I had just graduated high school that summer. I was working part-time at a grocery store, saving money for community college, and doing what most people do at that age when they're stuck between being a kid and pretending they're an adult. My parents had gone out of town for a weekend in late July to visit my aunt in Pennsylvania. They trusted me enough to stay home alone, which was honestly a big deal at the time. I wasn't a troublemaker. I didn't drink, didn't throw parties, didn't sneak people in. I was boring in the most responsible way possible. So when my mom asked if I had plans, I told her the truth. Just having a few friends over. Movies, pizza, nothing crazy. She gave me the mom look. How many friends? 4. Maybe 5. No one upstairs. Lock the doors. Don't burn the house down. That was basically the whole lecture. The plan was simple. My friends were coming over around 7. We were going to order pizza, play video games, watch bad horror movies, and sleep in the living room like we used to when we were younger. It felt kind of childish, but in a good way. Like one last summer night before everyone split off into different lives. There were 6 of us total. Me, my best friend Evan, my friend Marcus, 2 girls from our school named Jenna and Priya, and my cousin Nate, who was 17 and practically lived at my house during summers anyway. We'd all known each other for years. There was nothing awkward or dramatic between us. No secret crush situation, no weird tension. Just a group of friends trying to squeeze something fun out of the last part of summer. The house itself wasn't creepy. That's what I want to make clear. It was normal, painfully normal. Living room in the front, kitchen in the back, stairs near the hallway, basement door by the side entrance. My mom had candles everywhere that smelled like vanilla or clean laundry. The carpet was beige. The couch was gray. There was a framed picture of my sister and me from a vacation in Myrtle Beach hanging crooked over the TV. That night, it had rained earlier, so everything outside smelled wet and earthy. The street lights reflected off the driveway. Every few minutes, a car would pass slowly through the neighborhood, tires hissing on the damp road. By 8, everyone was there. We had sleeping bags rolled out across the living room floor, pillows everywhere, soda cans on the coffee table, and 2 large pizzas already half gone. I remember the sleeping bags clearly because we had joked about them. Mine was dark blue old and smelled faintly like the basement no matter how many times my mom washed it. Evan had a red one with a broken zipper. Marcus brought some expensive camping, one his dad used for hunting trips. Jenna had a purple one covered in little white stars. Priya had a plain green one. Nate didn't bring one because he never planned ahead. He just grabbed a blanket from the hallway closet and made a nest between the couch and the TV stand. 6 people, 5 sleeping bags, 1 blanket. That's important. Around 10:30, the rain started again. Not a storm, just steady tapping against the windows. We turned off most of the lights, left 1 lamp on near the hallway, and put on some low-budget horror movie that was more funny than scary. At some point, Marcus paused the movie and said, "Wait, whose is that?" He was pointing toward the far corner of the living room, near the front window. There was a sleeping bag there. At first, nobody reacted much. It was rolled out flat against the wall, partly in shadow, the foot end tucked near my mom's fake plant. It was a dull gray color, almost silver, with a black stripe running down the side. I stared at it, trying to place it. "Is that yours?" I asked Nate. He looked over from his blanket pile. "No, I didn't bring anything." Evan leaned up on one elbow. "Maybe it was already there." "It wasn't," Jenna said quickly. That made everyone look at her. She shrugged, but her face had changed a little. "I mean, I don't think it was. I put my bag down first, remember? That corner was empty." Priya laughed, but it came out nervous. "Maybe Caleb has random sleeping bags hidden around his house." "I don't," I said, and I meant it. I got up and walked over to it. Not bravely, just casually, because at that point it still felt like a normal mystery. Like maybe one of my parents had pulled it out for guests, and I forgot. The sleeping bag was zipped halfway up, but it was completely flat. There was no shape inside it, no shoes sticking out, nothing. I nudged it with my foot. Empty. The fabric made that soft, slippery sound sleeping bags make when they rub against carpet. Marcus said, "Dude, maybe your parents left it out." "My parents don't camp," I said, "and I've never seen this before." Nate sat up and squinted. "Could be from the basement." That explanation landed, and I wanted it to be true badly enough that I accepted it immediately. Our basement had shelves full of old junk. Christmas decorations, paint cans, boxes of cords, things my dad refused to throw away. There could have been a sleeping bag down there. Maybe Nate grabbed it earlier and forgot. Maybe I pulled it out weeks ago. Maybe some random explanation existed. I told myself it was nothing. That's one of the stupidest things people say in stories like this, but it's also the most realistic. You don't jump straight to terror. You look for boring answers because boring answers let you keep living your night. So I picked it up, folded it over once, and pushed it back tighter into the corner. "Congratulations," I said. "We have a guest bag." Everyone laughed, and the mood recovered. For a while, we watched another movie. We played a fighting game and yelled at each other. Around midnight, Jenna went to the kitchen for water. I remember checking my phone because my mom had texted, asking if everything was okay. I replied, "Yeah, all good." Then Jenna came back into the living room and stopped, so suddenly Priya bumped into her. "What?" Priya asked. Jenna didn't answer right away. She just pointed. The gray sleeping bag was no longer in the corner. It was still on the same side of the room, but now it was about 2 feet farther out, closer to us. Not a huge distance. Not across the room. Just enough that it looked wrong. At first, my brain refused to accept it. I stared at the empty corner, then at the sleeping bag, then back again. "Did someone move that?" Jenna asked. Nobody answered. Evan laughed, but it was fake. "Okay, who's messing around?" Marcus looked at Nate. "Was it you?" Nate's face twisted. "Why would I move a sleeping bag 2 feet?" "To be annoying," Marcus said. "I didn't touch it. I looked at the carpet, like maybe there would be drag marks. There weren't. The living room carpet was too thick to show anything." I walked over again. My mouth had gone weirdly dry. The sleeping bag was still zipped halfway. Still flat. Still empty. I pressed down on it with my foot harder this time. Nothing inside. "Maybe when Caleb picked it up, he didn't put it all the way back," Priya said. I nodded too fast. "Yeah, probably. But I knew where I had pushed it. I knew it had been touching the wall." I dragged it back into the corner and put the fake plant in front of it, like that solved anything. "See?" I said. "Now it can't move." Nobody laughed this time. After that, the night changed. Not dramatically. Nobody screamed or left. But the room got quieter. The movie we put on next played mostly ignored. Every few minutes, someone looked toward the corner. Even when I tried not to, my eyes kept going there. The gray fabric was barely visible behind the fake plant. At 1 in the morning, Evan announced he was hungry again and wanted leftover pizza. "I'll come with you," Marcus said immediately. That made me feel worse, because Marcus never admitted being scared of anything. He was the guy who would walk through an abandoned building just to prove a point. But he didn't want to go 12 feet into my kitchen alone. The two of them went. We heard the fridge open, plates clatter, someone whispering. I stayed in the living room with Jenna, Priya, and Nate. Rain tapped against the front window. The lamp near the hallway flickered once. Not off, just dimmer for half a second. Nate muttered, "I hate your house." "It's not my house," I said. "It's my parents' house." "That makes it worse." Then Evan and Marcus came back. And Marcus dropped the plate. It hit the carpet upside down, pizza sliding onto the floor. He didn't even look at it. He was staring at the corner. The fake plant had been moved. Not knocked over. Moved. It was now sitting about a foot to the left, perfectly upright, like someone had gently placed it there. The sleeping bag was out again. Closer than before. This time it was maybe 5 feet from the corner, angled slightly toward us. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. We all heard it, a soft shift, like socked feet on carpet. From the hallway behind us, everyone turned at once. The hallway was empty. The lamp glowed yellow against family photos and the closed bathroom door. The stairs were dark beyond it. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Nobody spoke. Then Priya whispered, "Caleb." I looked back at her. Her eyes were wet. "Is someone in your house?" That question hit me harder than anything else so far. Because until then, I'd been thinking about the sleeping bag like it was the problem. Like it was some impossible object doing something it shouldn't. But the second she said that, the whole shape of the night changed. A sleeping bag doesn't move itself. Someone moves it. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. Evan grabbed the baseball bat my dad kept near the front closet, even though my dad claimed it was for sports equipment and not home defense. Marcus picked up a heavy glass candle from the coffee table. We checked the hallway first. Bathroom empty. Coat closet full of jackets. Laundry room empty. Kitchen empty. Back door locked. Then we checked downstairs. I hated the basement at night. It wasn't finished, just concrete floor, storage shelves, old furniture, and the washer and dryer. The pull chain light near the stairs always swung slightly after you turned it on, making shadows move across the walls. We went down together. 4 of us, because Jenna and Priya refused to come, but also refused to be left alone. So they stood at the top of the stairs watching us. The basement smelled like dust and detergent. We checked behind boxes, under the stairs, behind the furnace, around the old couch my parents kept saying they'd donate. Nothing. No person. No open window. No sleeping bag storage pile. I did notice one thing, though. The small basement window near the washer wasn't locked. It was closed, but the latch was turned sideways. That window was tiny. Like maybe a child could squeeze through, but not an adult. At least that's what I told myself when I saw it. I locked it and said, "Probably my dad forgot." Evan looked at me. "Bro, what? You don't believe that?" No, I didn't. But I didn't know what else to do. We went back upstairs. Everyone was standing now. Nobody wanted to sit on the floor. The sleeping bags we'd brought suddenly looked too vulnerable, too low to the ground. I said we should call someone. Nate said, "Like who?" "The cops," Jenna said. Marcus shook his head. "And say what?" "Our sleeping bag moved." Priya snapped. "Say someone might be in the house." That got quiet, because that sounded real. That sounded serious. I called the non-emergency police line first, which I know sounds ridiculous now. But at the time, I was still embarrassed. I didn't want officers showing up with lights flashing, because 6 almost adults scared themselves over a mystery sleeping bag. The dispatcher listened politely. I explained that we heard something and thought someone might have entered the house. She asked if we saw anyone. I said no. She asked if anything was missing. I said no. She told us to stay together, keep the doors locked, and an officer would drive by when available. When available is one of those phrases that feels very different depending on the situation. We waited. At around 2, a police cruiser rolled slowly past the house. We watched through the blinds. It didn't stop, just slowed, turned its spotlight across the front yard, then continued down the street. For some reason, that made me feel worse. Because if someone was watching us from outside, They had just watched the police leave. After that, Jenna called her older brother, but he didn't answer. Priya wanted to call her mom. She was embarrassed, though, and kept saying her mom would freak out. Evan said we could all leave and go to his house, but his parents were home and asleep, and none of us wanted to explain why we were dragging sleeping bags over there at 2 in the morning. It's strange how social embarrassment can trap you. You'd think fear would make everything simple. Leave, run, call for help. But real fear gets tangled with stupid thoughts. I don't want to overreact. I don't want to look dumb. Maybe I'm scaring everyone for no reason. We decided to stay awake until morning. We turned on every light downstairs. I took the gray sleeping bag and shoved it into the front closet. Then I put a dining chair under the closet doorknob. Not because it made sense, just because I needed some physical barrier between us and it. For maybe 40 minutes, nothing happened. The rain stopped. The house settled. Someone's phone buzzed. We spoke in quiet voices, trying to make jokes. At 2:47, the dining chair moved. Not fell, moved. One leg scraped across the floor with a slow, ugly sound. Every person in that living room stopped breathing at the same time. The chair was still under the closet doorknob, but it had shifted sideways like pressure from inside the closet had pushed it. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. That sentence sounds dramatic, but that's exactly how it felt, like the house had sealed around us. Evan stood up with the bat. "No," Jenna whispered. "No, don't." But he was already moving toward the closet, slow and stiff. I grabbed his arm. "Don't open it," I said. The closet door made a tiny clicking sound. The knob turned halfway, then stopped against the chair. Priya started crying silently, one hand over her mouth. Marcus whispered, "Call 911. This time, I didn't hesitate. I called and told the dispatcher there was someone inside the house. Not maybe, not we think. Someone was inside my front closet. She told us to leave if we could do so safely. The front door was beside the closet. The back door was through the kitchen, around the corner. To get there, we'd have to turn our backs on the closet." We all looked at each other, and I could see the same calculation happening in everyone's face. Then the closet door pushed outward again. The chair scraped another inch. That sound broke us. We ran, not gracefully, not like a movie. Nate tripped over Priya's sleeping bag and slammed into the coffee table. Jenna screamed his name. Marcus yanked him up by the back of his shirt. I dropped my phone, grabbed it, dropped it again, then finally got it in my hand. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. We reached the kitchen, and I unlocked the back door. Behind us, from the living room, came the sound of the chair falling over. Then the closet door opening. No one looked back. We spilled onto the back deck in socks and bare feet. The wood was wet and cold. Priya slipped on the steps, and Jenna caught her. We ran across the backyard, toward the neighbor's house behind mine. The grass soaked through my socks. My lungs burned. I could hear someone sobbing behind me, maybe Nate, maybe me. Our back neighbor was a retired man named Mr. Lowell. He was the kind of neighbor who waved every time he saw you, but somehow still seemed annoyed you existed. His porch light was on, thank God. We pounded on his sliding glass door until he appeared in a robe, holding a cordless phone like a weapon. When he saw our faces, he unlocked the door immediately. "What happened?" "Someone's in my house," I said. That was all I could get out. He got us inside, locked the door, and called 911 again. I was still on with the dispatcher, but I could barely talk. I just kept saying my address over and over, like if I repeated it enough, help would arrive faster. From Mr. Lowell's kitchen window, we could see the back of my house. Every downstairs light was still on. The back door hung open. Nothing moved. That somehow made it worse. I expected someone to come running out. I expected to see a shadow, a figure, anything. But the house just sat there, bright and open and ordinary. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late. that danger often wears a friendly face. The police arrived within minutes that time. 2 cruisers. For officers. They went in through the back door with flashlights, hands near their holsters. We watched from Mr. Lowell's kitchen, all of us huddled together like little kids. One officer came out after a few minutes and asked me to step onto the deck. I didn't want to, but Mr. Lowell came with me. The officer asked who lived in the house, whether my parents were home, whether anyone else had keys, whether we had been drinking or using anything. I said no to everything. Then he asked, "Do you know a man named Peter Wallace?" I didn't. The name meant nothing to me. The officer studied my face for a second, then said, "We found an ID in the sleeping bag." I just stared at him. "In the sleeping bag?" He nodded. "But was he in the house?" The officer didn't answer right away. That was the first moment I understood this wasn't over. They searched the house for almost an hour. They didn't find anyone inside, but they found things. The gray sleeping bag was in the front hallway, not the closet. It was unzipped completely, empty, and stretched out flat like someone had crawled out of it. Inside it, they found a wallet with the ID, a cheap prepaid phone, a pair of thin black gloves, and a small key ring. One of the keys on that ring opened our back door. I remember the officer telling me that, and I remember feeling like the world tilted sideways. Because we didn't hide a spare key outside. My parents weren't careless like that. Later, we found out the key had likely been copied from one my dad left with a contractor months earlier when we were getting the kitchen floor repaired. The company had used subcontractors. Nobody could prove how the key got copied or who had access to it, but the name on the ID gave them a place to start. Peter Wallace was 42. He lived 2 neighborhoods over in a rented room. He had a record, mostly trespassing and harassment complaints, nothing that sounded dramatic enough to explain what he did that night. But then things got worse. The prepaid phone had photos on it. Not many, maybe 12 or 13. Most were blurry pictures of my house taken from across the street. One showed my parents loading suitcases into their car that Friday afternoon. One showed me standing in the driveway earlier that evening, carrying a case of soda from my car. One showed Jenna and Priya arriving. One showed the living room through the front window. You couldn't see much because of the reflection, but you could see the sleeping bags on the floor. And there was one photo that made me feel cold in a way I can't really explain. It was taken from inside my house, from the hallway. It showed the living room while we were all watching the first movie. Our backs were to the camera. The gray sleeping bag was already in the corner. That meant he had been inside before any of us noticed it. Maybe in the closet, maybe upstairs, maybe moving around the house while we laughed and ate pizza and complained about the movie. When the officer told me that, I sat down on Mr. Lowell's deck because my knees just stopped working. They didn't show us all the photos. I'm glad they didn't, but knowing that one existed was enough. Peter Wallace wasn't caught that night. That's the part people hate when I tell this story. They want the clean ending. The cops find him hiding in the basement. He gets arrested. Everyone goes home shaken but safe. That didn't happen. He got out before the police arrived. They believed he left through the front door while we were running out the back, or possibly slipped upstairs and climbed out a window over the porch roof. One upstairs window in my parents' bedroom was found unlocked, though nobody could say if it had been unlocked before. For 3 days, I didn't stay in that house. My parents came home early. My mom cried when she saw the police report. My dad changed every lock, installed cameras, and blamed himself in that quiet dad way where he barely spoke for a week. My friends handled it differently. Evan made jokes because he didn't know what else to do. Marcus got angry and kept saying he should have opened the closet and hit the guy with the bat, even though we all knew that could have gone very badly. Priya stopped sleeping with her bedroom door open. Jenna didn't come back to my house for almost a year. Nate had nightmares. He never really talked about them, but my aunt told my mom he kept waking up and checking his closet. The police eventually found Peter Wallace. Not because of us. He was arrested 2 weeks later after a woman in another neighborhood reported a man standing in her backyard at night, looking through her kitchen window. When officers searched his room, They found more phones, more photos, and several keys that didn't belong to him. They also found camping gear, sleeping bags, tarps, rope, flashlights. The detective told my parents they believed he had been watching houses where families left for trips. He looked for patterns. Cars gone, lights off, mail in boxes. Then he entered when he thought homes were empty. But our house wasn't empty. That's the part that still gets me. He knew people were there. He watched us arrive. He saw us set up on the floor. And he still came inside. Or worse, he was already inside and decided to stay. I asked the detective once why he moved the sleeping bag closer. The detective said, "Control." Just that one word. Control. He said people like Wallace sometimes enjoyed seeing how close they could get without being caught. He probably wanted to scare us, but slowly. He wanted us doubting each other. He wanted to turn a normal room into a trap. I asked if he had planned to hurt us. The detective didn't answer directly. He said, "You did the right thing by leaving." That was answer enough. For months afterward, I couldn't sleep in the living room. I couldn't even sit on the floor without feeling exposed. I started checking closets before bed, then checking them again because I didn't trust the first check. I learned the exact sound every door in our house made. I knew which floorboards creaked. I knew how the air conditioner sounded when it kicked on at night. My parents got annoyed at first, then worried. My mom would say, "Caleb, the doors are locked." And I'd say, "I know." But knowing didn't help, because that night taught me something I wish I didn't know. A locked door only matters until someone has a key. The weirdest part is how normal the memory feels at the beginning. When I think back to that night, I don't first remember the police lights or the closet door or running barefoot through wet grass. I remember pizza grease on paper plates. I remember Evan laughing so hard soda came out of his nose. I remember Priya throwing popcorn at Marcus because he kept guessing the movie ending. I remember rain on the windows and the smell of my mom's vanilla candle. That's what scares me now. Not dark alleys, not abandoned houses, not places that look dangerous. It's the normal places. Living rooms, hallways, suburban streets. The corner by the front window where a fake plant sits. Sometimes danger doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it doesn't kick the door in or shout your name. Sometimes it lies flat in the corner of the room, zipped halfway up, waiting for you to explain it away. I'm 26 now. I live in an apartment with 2 locks, a camera, and a habit of checking behind the shower curtain, even though I know it's ridiculous. I still keep in touch with most of the people from that night, but we don't talk about it much. Every once in a while, someone will mention it lightly like, "Remember that sleeping bag thing?" And everyone gets quiet for a second. Because it wasn't just a sleeping bag thing. It was a man inside my house. It was photos taken from my hallway. It was a stranger turning a closet knob while 6 of us stood there realizing, at the same time, that we were not safe. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I didn't mention that earlier because for a long time, I convinced myself I imagined it. When we were standing in Mr. Lowell's kitchen, before the police arrived, I looked back at my house. Just once. For half a second, in the upstairs bedroom window, I saw someone looking down at us. A pale face. Still. Expressionless. Then it was gone. The police never confirmed he was upstairs when they entered. They never found fingerprints on that window. They never found a clear footprint on the roof. So maybe I imagined it. Maybe fear filled in a blank space. I hope that's true. But sometimes, late at night, when my apartment is quiet and the hallway outside my door goes still, I remember that gray sleeping bag inching closer across the carpet. And I remember how badly I wanted it to be nothing. That's the warning I'd give anyone listening. When something feels wrong in a place where you're supposed to feel safe, don't argue with yourself for too long. Don't worry about looking dramatic. Don't wait for the proof to become undeniable. Because by the time it does, whatever is watching you may already be inside. Story 2. Have you ever been in a room full of people and still felt completely alone? I don't mean lonely. I mean that feeling where everyone is laughing, talking, passing drinks around, acting normal, but something in the room has shifted. Something you can't point to. Something that makes your skin tighten around your bones. That's what I remember most about that night. Not the screaming. Not the police lights outside the apartment. Not even the man's face in the window, though I still see it sometimes when I'm half asleep. What I remember is sitting cross-legged on my living room floor with 6 of my friends, playing a stupid game we used to play when we were kids, and hearing my friend quietly say a sentence that nobody in that circle had whispered to her. It's already in the room. My name is Aaron. I was 22 when this happened, living in a small apartment complex outside Dayton, Ohio. Not the nice part, not the terrible part. Just one of those places where every building looks exactly the same, with beige siding, cracked sidewalks, little patches of mulch around dying bushes, and parking spots that everyone secretly fights over but pretends not to care about. I was going to community college part-time and working mornings at a bakery inside a grocery store. My life back then was pretty ordinary. I woke up at 4:30, drove to work in the dark, came home smelling like yeast and sugar, did homework when I had the energy, and spent most evenings either with my roommate, Paige, or a small group of friends I'd known since high school. Paige and I had a 2-bedroom apartment on the first floor. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. The walls were thin, the kitchen light flickered when the dishwasher ran, and the bedroom windows faced a narrow strip of grass and then the back side of another building. But when you're 22 and broke, having your own place feels like luxury. Our friend group had this habit of doing game nights on Fridays. Nothing big. Usually frozen pizza, cheap soda, card games, sometimes bad horror movies if someone brought one. It was the kind of routine that made life feel safe. Boring in a good way. That Friday was in late October, which probably made everything feel creepier than it needed to be. The air had that cold, wet smell, like leaves rotting in gutters. People had fake spider webs on balconies and plastic skeletons hanging from front doors. Our apartment complex had orange porch lights here and there, but half of them didn't work, so the walkways had these long dark gaps between pools of light. The first weird thing happened 2 nights before the game. I got home from work around noon, exhausted, and there was a man standing near the dumpster behind our building. That alone wasn't strange. People hung around there sometimes, smoking or tossing out trash. But this guy wasn't doing anything. He was just standing with his hands in the pockets of a dark jacket, looking up at our building. At first, I thought maybe he was waiting for someone. He looked maybe late 30s, early 40s. Average height. Baseball cap pulled low. Scruffy but not homeless looking. Just plain. The kind of face your mind doesn't hold on to unless it has a reason. I parked, grabbed my bag, and walked toward the breezeway. As I passed him, he said, "Aaron?" I stopped. That was the first mistake. I should have kept walking. I turned and said, "Yeah?" He smiled like he knew me. Not a big smile. Just enough to make it worse. "You dropped something," he said. I looked down, then behind me. There was nothing on the ground. When I looked back, he was still staring. I said, "No, I don't think so." He nodded slowly, like I had answered a question he hadn't asked. Then he said, "Okay, just checking." I went inside and locked the door behind me. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he'd heard Paige say my name before. Maybe he was visiting someone and confused me with another Aaron. Maybe I had dropped something and he couldn't see it anymore. People do weird things. That was what I told myself. But later that afternoon, when Paige came home, I asked if she knew a guy in a dark jacket who hung around the dumpster. She was standing at the kitchen counter opening a yogurt, and she barely looked up. "What guy?" I described him. She shrugged. "Maintenance, maybe?" He knew my name. That made her look up. "Like he said your name?" "Yeah, maybe from the mailbox." That actually made sense. Our mailboxes were in the breezeway, and our last names were taped inside the little slots. My first name wasn't on mine, but packages were sometimes left by the door. Maybe he had seen one. Paige said, "Don't freak yourself out. It's almost Halloween. Everyone's creepy right now." I laughed because I wanted to believe her. The next day, Thursday, I saw him again. This time I was leaving for work at 4:40 in the morning. The whole complex was quiet except for the low hum of air conditioners and a dog barking somewhere far off. The sky was black, the kind of black that makes your headlights feel weak. I had just stepped out of the breezeway when I noticed a shape near the staircase of the next building. A man. Same jacket. Same hat. He was standing half in shadow, facing my direction. My heart gave one hard thump. I stopped walking for maybe half a second, then forced myself to continue. I didn't want him to know he scared me. I got to my car, unlocked it, and climbed in fast. As I started the engine, he lifted one hand. Not a wave exactly. More like he was showing me he knew I had seen him. I backed out too fast and almost hit the curb. At work, I told my coworker Marcy about it while we were arranging trays of muffins. Marcy was in her 50s and had that no-nonsense mom energy. She didn't scare easily. She said, "You tell the office?" "About what?" "A guy standing outside." "About a guy knowing your name and watching you leave before sunrise?" "Yes, Aaron. About that." So after my shift, I stopped by the leasing office. The woman at the desk, Linda, listened politely while tapping on her keyboard. I described him. Dark jacket, baseball cap, maybe brown hair, scruffy. She frowned and said, "We don't have maintenance staff that match that description. Our maintenance guys are Dave and Luis, and they both wear uniforms." That made my stomach dip a little. She asked if he had threatened me. I said no. Had he touched me? No. Had he tried to enter my apartment? No. She told me to call the non-emergency police line if I saw him again, and to let them know if he was loitering. She also said she'd keep an eye out, which is something people say when they can't really do anything. That night, Paige and I double-checked the locks. I remember trying to make it funny. "Look at us," I said. Two grown women afraid of a random trash man. Paige smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Friday came, and by then I almost wanted game night just so the apartment wouldn't feel so quiet. Our friends started showing up around 7. There was Paige, obviously, then our friends Matt, Taylor, Jordan, Vanessa, and Chris. Chris was Paige's cousin, technically, but he'd been around long enough that he was basically part of the group. We ordered pizza, complained about work, played cards for a while, and watched half of some terrible movie with a haunted corn maze. The kind where everyone makes the dumbest possible choices, and you yell at the screen like you'd do better. For a few hours, I actually forgot about the man outside. That's how fear works sometimes. It doesn't stay at the front of your mind. It drifts to the corner and waits. Around 11, the weather got worse. Rain started tapping against the windows, light at first, then steady. The wind pushed dead leaves across the patio, making this dry scratching sound against the glass door. We had turned off most of the lights because of the movie, so the living room was lit by the TV and one small lamp by the couch. Everyone was in that tired, lazy mood where nobody wants to go home, but nobody has energy to do anything real. That's when Taylor suggested we play the whisper game. You probably know it by another name. Telephone. One person whispers a sentence to the next person, and it goes around the circle until the last person says what they heard. Usually it turns into something stupid, and everyone laughs. We hadn't played it since we were kids, so of course it sounded funny at midnight in a half-dark apartment. Matt said, "What are we, 9?" Taylor tossed a pillow at him. "Shut up, it'll be funny." So we sat in a loose circle on the floor and around the couch. I was between Paige and Vanessa. Chris was at the end near the hallway, sitting with his back close to the wall that led to the bedrooms. The first few rounds were normal. The sentence, "My aunt bought a purple canoe," turned into "My aunt fought a turtle raccoon," and everyone lost it. Another one started as "Jordan smells like wet pennies," and came back as "Jordan sells pet babies," which made no sense but had us laughing anyway. Then Paige started a sentence. She leaned toward me and whispered, "The pizza is secretly made of cardboard." I whispered it to Vanessa, or at least I thought I did. By the time it got to Chris, he frowned and said, "Wait, what?" Taylor said, "Just say what you heard." Chris looked embarrassed. "I heard. The person outside knows your apartment." The room went quiet for a second, then Matt laughed. That's actually better than cardboard pizza. I laughed too, because everyone else did, but it felt forced coming out of my mouth. Paige looked at me. She knew. I said, "Who changed it?" Vanessa raised both hands. "Not me." Jordan said. I said cardboard. Matt said, "I said something about the person outside eating cardboard, maybe?" Taylor rolled her eyes. "It's telephone. That's the point." Chris rubbed the back of his neck. "I swear someone said the person outside knows your apartment." No one admitted it. I tried not to make a big deal out of it. I didn't want to ruin the mood by dragging everyone into my weird paranoia. So I shrugged and said, "Creepy. Next round." But I remember feeling colder after that. The second strange round started with Matt. He leaned over to Taylor and whispered something. Taylor whispered to Jordan, then Jordan to Paige, Paige to me to Vanessa, Vanessa to Chris. What Paige whispered to me was, "Don't eat the last slice." That was all. I whispered the exact same thing to Vanessa. When it got to Chris, he stared down at the carpet and didn't speak. Matt said, "Come on, what did it become?" Chris said quietly, "Don't look behind you." Nobody laughed. The TV was still playing the movie, but someone had muted it earlier, so the only sound was rain tapping the window and the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Taylor said, "Okay, who's being dramatic?" Matt raised his hands. "Not me." Jordan gave this nervous little laugh. "Very original, guys." I turned slightly and looked toward the patio door behind me. The blinds were closed, but not all the way. There was a thin gap between two slats, and beyond it was only darkness and rain. I didn't see anything. Still, my shoulders tightened. Vanessa said, "I said don't eat the last slice." "I swear." Chris looked genuinely confused. "Then why did I hear that?" Paige said, "Maybe you misheard." Chris didn't answer. He was still staring at the hallway. That was when I noticed the bedroom door. My door was slightly open. I didn't remember leaving it that way. Now, that doesn't sound like much. Bedroom doors get left open. Air moves. People walk past and bump them. But I was very particular about my room, especially when friends came over. I always shut the door because my laundry was usually everywhere and I didn't want people seeing it. I looked at Paige. She followed my eyes and noticed it too. She whispered, "Did you open that?" I shook my head. Vanessa said, "What?" I stood up and said, "Nothing. I'm just going to close my door." The second I stepped toward the hallway, something knocked from inside my bedroom. One single knock. Not loud. Not like someone pounding. Just a soft tap against wood. Every person in that living room froze. For a moment, I could actually feel the silence. It had weight. Matt stood up behind me and said, "What was that?" I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. It was so faint I almost convinced myself it was the rain. A tiny creak, a shift of weight, then the bedroom door moved another inch. Paige grabbed my wrist. Nobody spoke for maybe 5 seconds. Then Chris, of all people, laughed too loudly and said, "Okay, nice. Who's hiding in there?" No one answered. He walked toward the hallway. I said, "Chris, don't." He stopped and looked back at me. Something in my voice must have told him I wasn't playing. Matt grabbed the heavy flashlight we kept by the coat rack. It was one of those big metal ones Paige's dad gave us when we moved in. He held it like a weapon and stepped in front of Chris. "Everybody stay here," he said. That's what people say in movies right before doing something stupid. But in real life, when you're scared, nobody knows what the right move is. Calling the police felt dramatic when all we had was an open door and a noise. Checking the room felt insane, but also necessary. We were trapped in that stupid middle space where fear still had to justify itself. Matt took 2 steps down the hall. The bedroom door suddenly swung open. Not fast. Not slammed. It opened slowly, like someone on the other side had pulled it with one finger. Vanessa screamed. Matt jumped back so hard he hit the wall. Inside my bedroom, everything was dark. Paige shouted, "Get out! Get out of the apartment!" That snapped us into motion. Everyone started moving at once. Taylor grabbed her purse. Jordan knocked over a cup. Vanessa was crying. I couldn't find my phone, even though it was literally in my hand. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. That sentence sounds dramatic, but that's exactly how it felt. Because in the chaos, instead of running toward the front door with everyone else, I had backed into the kitchen. The others were near the entryway, yelling, fumbling with shoes, tripping over each other. And then the front door wouldn't open. At first, I thought someone was pulling instead of turning, but Paige was twisting the deadbolt over and over, saying, "It's stuck. It's stuck." The chain lock was on. We never used the chain lock. I stared at it. That little brass chain slid into place from inside the apartment. For one horrible second, nobody moved, because we all understood at the same time. Someone had been inside the apartment while we were playing. Someone had locked us in. Matt shoved past Paige and ripped the chain so hard the screws tore partly out of the frame. The door flew open and cold, wet air rushed in. Everyone spilled into the breezeway. I was last. As I crossed the threshold, I looked back. I wish I hadn't. At the end of the hallway, inside my bedroom doorway, there was a face. Just a face and part of a shoulder, half hidden behind the doorframe. A man in a baseball cap. He was watching us. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He didn't even look startled. He just stood there with calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I screamed then. Not a movie scream. More like my body forcing air out, because it couldn't hold it anymore. Matt pulled me outside and we ran. The rain was cold enough to hurt. We didn't stop at the breezeway. We ran across the parking lot to Jordan's car, but his keys were inside the apartment. Then we ran to the building across from ours and started banging on doors. A woman on the second floor opened her door, just enough to ask what was happening. Paige shouted, "Call 911, there's someone in our apartment." The woman's face changed. She let us in immediately. We crowded into her little entryway, soaking wet and shaking, while she called the police. Her name was Mrs. Delaney. I remember that because she kept saying, "You're okay, honey. You're okay," even though I wasn't. The police arrived fast, maybe 6 or 7 minutes later, but it felt like an hour. They went into our apartment with flashlights. The man was gone. Of course he was gone. My bedroom window was open. The screen had been removed and was lying in the grass outside, bent at one corner. There were muddy prints on my carpet. My closet door was open. A few things had been moved around, but nothing obvious was missing at first. Then one officer came out holding a small plastic grocery bag. He asked me, "Do you recognize this?" Inside were things from my life. Not valuables. Things. A hair tie I had lost weeks earlier. A receipt from the bakery with my name printed on it. A torn corner of an envelope addressed to me. A chapstick from my car. A photo strip of Paige and me from a mall photo booth. One of my work shirts, folded neatly. I felt like I was going to throw up. The officer asked if I had an ex-boyfriend. Someone angry. Someone obsessed. I said no. I had dated a guy named Ryan the year before, but we ended normally. He lived 2 cities away and had a girlfriend. It wasn't him. I knew it wasn't. Then they found the worst thing. Under my bed, pushed close to the wall, was a cheap black phone. One of those prepaid phones you buy at a gas station. It was on silent. The battery was almost dead. The police took it as evidence, but one officer looked through enough to tell us there were photos on it. Photos of me. Not just from outside. Not just walking to my car. There were pictures taken through my bedroom window. Pictures of me asleep. Pictures of Paige and me sitting on the couch. Pictures of our friends arriving for game night. There was also one video. The officer didn't show it to me, but I heard him describe it to another cop in the kitchen, probably thinking I couldn't hear. It was taken from inside my closet, earlier that night, while we were all in the living room. That was when I sat down on the floor and started crying in a way I'm still embarrassed by. Full body crying, shaking, making sounds I couldn't control, because it wasn't a creepy game anymore. It wasn't a strange man near the dumpster. It wasn't my imagination. He had been inside my room while I was making jokes with my friends 15 feet away. He had been listening. And somehow during that game, he had whispered too. We found out later how he probably did it. Chris had been sitting closest to the hallway. During the round where he heard, "Don't look behind you," he said he thought Vanessa had leaned close to his ear, but now he wasn't sure. The room was dark, everyone was laughing, and he had turned his head slightly. He remembered feeling breath near his ear, but he assumed it was part of the game. The last round is the one I still can't explain cleanly, because after the bedroom door opened, we all ran before finishing it. But I know what happened right before that. Taylor wanted to do one more round, because she hated ending things on a creepy note. She said something like, "No, we're not letting the haunted telephone win." Everyone was nervous, but trying to laugh. Paige started it. The sentence was, "I'm tired and I want everyone to go home." I know because she whispered it to me first. By the time it reached Chris, he didn't repeat it right away. His face had gone pale. Matt said, "What?" Chris swallowed and said, "It's already in the room." That was the sentence nobody whispered. That was the moment everything changed. When the police searched the outside of the building, they found muddy footprints under my bedroom window leading toward the tree line behind the complex. Past that was a small service road, and then a strip mall with a laundromat, a nail salon, and a closed-down Chinese restaurant. There were no cameras that worked well enough to catch him. The apartment complex had cameras at the leasing office, but not behind our building. The woman from the office, Linda, apologized about 20 times. She looked genuinely upset, but that didn't help much. The police asked neighbors if they'd seen anyone. A couple people said they'd noticed a man hanging around the dumpsters that week. One person thought he lived in Building C. Someone else said they'd seen him sitting in a dark sedan in the visitor parking lot. But nobody knew his name. A detective called me 2 days later and said the prepaid phone had no useful contacts. No active service plan attached to a real name. The photos were there, but they didn't know who took them. There were no clean fingerprints on the phone. They dusted my window frame, but the prints were smudged or partial. He asked again about people in my life. Co-workers, customers, neighbors, delivery drivers, maintenance workers, anyone who seemed too interested. That was when I remembered something I hadn't thought about. About 3 weeks before it happened, a man came into the bakery right before closing. He bought one plain bagel and a black coffee. I remembered him because he kept trying to make conversation, even though I was clearly busy cleaning. He asked if I always worked mornings. I gave a vague answer. He asked if I lived nearby. I lied and said no. Then he said, "You look tired, Aaron." I was wearing a name tag. At the time, it felt annoying, not scary. Now I wondered if it was him. The detective asked if we had cameras at work. We did, but the footage was long gone by then. The store only kept it for a short period unless there was an incident. The worst part was how quickly normal life expected me to continue. Paige and I didn't sleep in the apartment that night. We stayed at her aunt's house. The next day, we went back with her dad and 2 police officers so we could pack clothes. I remember standing in my bedroom doorway, looking at the muddy footprints on the carpet, and feeling like the room didn't belong to me anymore. My bed was the same. My posters were still on the wall. My laundry basket was still overflowing in the corner, but it felt contaminated. Not dirty exactly, violated, like the air itself had touched him and kept the shape of him. I never slept there again. Paige's dad helped us break the lease. The apartment complex didn't fight it, probably because they knew we could make a lot of noise about the window and the lack of cameras. We moved out within a week. For a while, I stayed with my parents. My mom tried to be gentle about it, but she didn't understand why I couldn't just feel better once I was home. My dad installed extra locks on every door and motion lights around the house. He meant well. It helped a little, but fear isn't logical. I stopped sleeping with my blinds open. Then I stopped sleeping near windows at all. Then I started checking closets before bed, then under the bed, then behind shower curtains, even in houses I knew were safe. At work, if a man ordered black coffee, my stomach tightened. If someone said my name when I wasn't expecting it, I flinched. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. That's the part people don't get unless it happens to them. It's not just the night itself. It's what the night does to every ordinary thing afterward. A hallway isn't just a hallway anymore. It's a place someone could be standing. A window isn't just a window. It's a way in. A name tag isn't just a name tag. It's information. A silly game with friends isn't silly anymore. It's the moment you realize someone has been close enough to breathe into your ear. Months passed, then a year. They never caught him. The detective called a few times early on, then less, then not at all. That's how cases like mine go when nobody is dead and there's no clear suspect. I don't say that with anger exactly. I know they had worse cases. I know they did what they could, but knowing that doesn't make you feel safe. About 8 months after it happened, I got a message request on Instagram from an account with no profile picture. The username was random letters and numbers. The message said, "Do you still play?" That was all. I stared at it for a long time, sitting on my parents' couch with the TV on low and my mom asleep in the recliner. I didn't respond. I screenshotted it and sent it to the detective's email. By the time he checked, the account was gone. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe one of my friends told someone the story, and they thought it would be funny. People can be cruel in lazy ways, but I don't think it was a prank, because attached to the message was a photo. It wasn't from the apartment. It was from my parents' street. A blurry picture of my car in the driveway, taken at night. I didn't tell my mom at first. I couldn't. I knew she would panic, and I was already doing enough of that for both of us. I told my dad. He went very quiet. Then he walked outside with a flashlight and checked the whole yard, the shed, the side gate, under the deck. He didn't find anyone. The police took another report. Again, there wasn't much they could do. After that, my parents helped me change my car. Not buy a new one exactly. We traded with my aunt for a while. I changed my phone number, deleted most of my social media, stopped posting anything in real time. I quit the bakery and got a job in a dentist's office where I didn't have to wear a name tag with my full first name. I wish I could tell you all of that fixed it. It didn't. It made life smaller. That's what stalking does, even when it doesn't end in the worst possible way. It shrinks your world. You stop taking walks at night. Stop sitting by windows in restaurants. Stop leaving work alone. Stop trusting coincidences. And the person who did it doesn't have to be there anymore. They get inside your habits. I'm 27 now. I live in a different state. I have a husband who knows the whole story, though I still hate telling it out loud. We have cameras. We have alarms. We have locks that make guests joke that we're too cautious. I smile when they say that. I don't explain, because there's no way to explain what it feels like to hear a sentence that should not exist in a room. There's no way to explain how your brain tries to protect you by making excuses. Maybe the door was already open. Maybe Chris misheard. Maybe the man outside is harmless. Maybe you're being dramatic. Maybe. Sometimes maybe is just fear wearing a polite mask. I still think about Chris most, honestly. He was the one who heard it closest. For a long time after, he blamed himself for not reacting sooner. He said if he had turned around when he felt someone whisper, maybe he would have seen the guy before he got back into my room. I told him not to do that to himself. The truth is, none of us reacted because none of us wanted it to be real. That's another thing people don't understand. When something terrifying happens, you don't instantly become brave and decisive. A lot of the time, your mind just refuses to accept the shape of it. It keeps trying to push the moment back into something normal. A joke, a misunderstanding, a game, until the door opens, until the chain lock won't move, until you see the face watching from the hallway. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I don't know who he was. I don't know why he picked me. That bothered me for years. I kept searching for a reason, like reason would make it less terrifying. Was I too friendly at work? Did he follow me from the grocery store? Did he live in the complex? Had he seen me somewhere else before that week? But now I understand that some people don't need a deep reason. They only need access. They only need a window left unlocked once, a name on a receipt, a routine, a quiet apartment where everyone assumes the strange sound is just the building settling. I haven't played the whisper game since. I know that sounds obvious, maybe even stupid, but every once in a while, at a party or around a table, someone will suggest it as a joke. Remember telephone? Let's play. And I always feel my throat close a little, because I remember the circle, the rain, the muted TV, the way everyone's face changed when Chris spoke. I remember my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I remember looking back when I should have kept running. Most of all, I remember how ordinary the apartment looked before it happened. Pizza boxes on the coffee table, shoes by the door, laughing friends, cheap Halloween decorations taped to the wall. A normal Friday night. That's what scares me now. Not dark woods, not abandoned houses, not ghost stories. Normal rooms, normal nights. The kind where you think you're safe because you're surrounded by people. The kind where danger doesn't break in loudly. It waits quietly. It listens. And when everyone is whispering, it whispers too. Story 3. Have you ever been in a room where everyone suddenly stops talking because the house itself seems to answer? I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like one of those stories people tell when they want attention, or when they've convinced themselves that bad plumbing is something more than bad plumbing. I used to think that way too, but there are sounds you can explain, and then there are sounds that make every person in the room look at each other at the same time, because somehow, without saying it out loud, you all know the sound meant something. My name is Daniel. I was 16 when this happened. I'm 22 now, and I still don't like sleeping in houses I don't know. Hotels are fine. Apartments are okay. But actual houses, especially older ones with basements, attics, back staircases, and those long, quiet hallways that seem too dark even during the day, those still get to me. This happened in a small town in western Pennsylvania, the kind of place where nothing ever really happens until it does. It was mostly split-level homes, chain-link fences, old basketball hoops leaning over driveways, and porches with wind chimes that always sounded a little sad. People left bikes on front lawns. Nobody locked their doors during the day. At night, the loudest thing you usually heard was a dog barking 2 streets over or a freight train passing somewhere far away. My best friend at the time was a kid named Evan Morris. He lived about 15 minutes from me in a house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. His house wasn't huge, but it felt bigger inside than it looked from the street. It had 2 floors, a finished basement, a little laundry room tucked behind the stairs, and an attic hatch in the upstairs hallway that none of us had ever seen opened. Evan's parents were the kind of people who trusted him more than they probably should have. His dad worked for a roofing company, and his mom was a nurse who did long shifts at the hospital. That weekend, they were out of town for a wedding, and Evan had convinced them to let a few of us sleep over. There were 5 of us. Me, Evan, our friend Chris, and 2 girls from our school, Maya and Lauren. We weren't doing anything crazy. No party, no alcohol, no sneaking people in. We were just 16 and bored and happy to be in a house with no adults for one night. It was late October, cold enough that everyone wore hoodies indoors, and it had been raining all day. Not a dramatic storm, just steady rain that tapped against windows and turned the roads shiny under the streetlights. Evan's backyard sloped into a thin patch of woods, and when it rained, the trees looked black and flat, like a painted backdrop. I remember all of that clearly because the night started so normal. That's the part one hates most when I think about it. Nothing felt cursed. Nothing felt wrong. We ordered pizza, watched dumb videos, played cards, argued about what movie to put on, and made fun of Evan because his basement smelled like laundry detergent and old carpet. Around 10:30, we were all in the basement. Evan had dragged a mattress down there, Chris had claimed the couch, and the rest of us were sitting on sleeping bags on the floor. There was a TV against one wall, a mini fridge in the corner, and an old wooden support beam near the center of the room that Evan's dad had once painted white and then apparently forgotten about. The first knock happened during the movie. It was a single knock, not a creak, not the house settling, not a pipe popping. A knock, sharp, clean, and hollow. Everyone heard it, but nobody reacted right away. It came from somewhere above us, maybe the kitchen floor or the wall near the stairs. Evan paused the movie and looked up. "What was that?" Lauren asked. "House is old," Evan said too quickly. "It does that." Chris laughed and threw a piece of popcorn at him. "Your house knocks. Everything knocks in this house. Pipes, vents, whatever." And that was that. We accepted it because that's what you do when you're 16 and you don't want to be the person who gets scared first. A few minutes later, it happened again. Knock. This time, Maya turned her head slowly toward the stairs. "That sounded like someone upstairs," she said. "It's not someone upstairs," Evan said. "My parents are gone." "That's not better," Chris said. We all laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that comes out a little thin. Evan got up and went upstairs to check. I remember watching him disappear up the basement steps, the light from the kitchen spilling down around his legs. He was gone maybe 30 seconds. Then we heard his footsteps moving above us. Kitchen, hallway, living room. Then he came back down holding a bag of chips, trying to act annoyed. "See? Nobody. You guys are babies." Maya rolled her eyes. "You went upstairs for chips." I also bravely investigated. We forgot about it for a while. The next hour was just normal sleepover stuff. We ate too much, talked about school, made fun of teachers, and tried to scare each other with stories we'd heard from older siblings. Around midnight, the rain got heavier. The basement windows were small rectangles near the ceiling, and every now and then, water would run down the glass in thick little trails. Then the knocking came back. But this time, it wasn't one knock. It was 5. Knock, 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 knock. They came slowly, evenly spaced. Not fast, not random. Each one sounded like a knuckle tapping on wood. The basement went quiet. Chris was halfway through saying something and just stopped. Maya had her phone in her hand, screen glowing against her face. Lauren was lying on her stomach with a blanket over her shoulders. Evan stood near the mini fridge with the door open, the cold light making him look pale. Nobody moved until the fridge beeped because the door had been open too long. Evan shut it. "What the hell was that?" Chris said. This time Evan didn't answer right away. He looked up at the ceiling, then toward the stairs. "It's probably the radiator," he said. "You don't have radiators," Maya said. Evan looked at her. "My grandma has radiators," she said. That was not a radiator. Chris sat up. It knocked 5 times. "So, there are 5 of us." Nobody laughed at that. It was such a stupid thing to say, but once he said it, it sat in the room with us. 5 knocks. 5 people. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the silence from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve quietly insisting that I was not imagining this. The house suddenly felt too still around us, like it had been listening and had decided to wait. Evan forced a laugh. "Okay, great. My house can count. Very spooky." "Do it again," Chris said, looking up. "Don't," Lauren snapped. Chris smirked, but he didn't repeat it. For a few minutes, we all pretended to go back to the movie. Nobody really watched it. We were all listening. That's what fear does first, I think. It steals your attention. Every tiny sound became something. Rain in the gutters, the hum of the fridge, the soft click of the furnace turning on. The house expanded around us in the dark, room by room, like it had gotten bigger while we weren't looking. At 12:40, Maya said she had to use the bathroom. The basement didn't have one, so she had to go upstairs. Lauren stood immediately. "I'll come with you." Chris made a joke about girls always going to the bathroom together, but neither of them laughed. They went up the stairs, and Evan unpaused the movie again, but the volume was low. Too low. A minute passed. Then another. Then we heard footsteps upstairs. 2 sets, moving from the hallway to the bathroom. The bathroom door closed. Chris leaned toward me and whispered, If it knocks 2 times, I'm leaving. Shut up, I whispered back. The bathroom flushed. Water ran in the sink. The door opened. Then from somewhere above us came 2 knocks. Knock. Knock. Chris stopped smiling. Evan stood up so fast the blanket fell off his lap. Maya and Lauren came down the stairs a few seconds later, both looking irritated. Very funny, Maya said. Evan stared at her. What? The knocking, Lauren said. You guys did that? No, Chris said. Lauren looked from him to me, then to Evan. We heard it from the hallway. We heard it down here, I said. That was when the atmosphere changed. Before that, we had been joking around the fear. After that, the jokes didn't land anymore. Evan said his house always made weird noises in the rain. He said the gutters were loose. He said sometimes branches hit the siding. He said his dad had mentioned squirrels in the attic once. He kept explaining, and the more he explained, the less convincing he sounded. Maya asked if they had cameras. Evan said there was a doorbell camera out front, but the app was on his dad's phone. There were no indoor cameras, no alarm system, no dog. That last part bothered me more than it should have. A dog would have made the house feel occupied in a different way. A dog would have reacted. A dog would have told us whether we were being stupid. Without one, there was only us. Around 1, we decided to all stay in the basement. Nobody wanted to go upstairs alone. Evan turned on more lights, including the laundry room light behind the stairs. The basement looked less creepy after that, but only in the way a parking lot looks less creepy when one fluorescent lamp is buzzing overhead. It didn't feel safe. It just felt exposed. Chris suggested we record the knocks if they happened again. He opened the voice memo app on his phone and set it on the coffee table. Maybe we'll go viral, he said. Lauren said, I swear to God, if this is some prank. It's not, Evan said. The way he said it made all of us look at him. What do you mean? Maya asked. Evan rubbed his face. I mean, I didn't do anything. Has this happened before? He hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Evan, I said, has this happened before? He sat down on the edge of the mattress. For the first time that night, he looked younger than 16. My mom heard knocking last week, he said. That's all. What kind of knocking? I don't know. Just knocking. Where? Upstairs. Maybe the attic. The room went silent again. Lauren pulled her blanket tighter. You said your dad thought there were squirrels in the attic. Yeah, squirrels don't knock like that. Nobody argued with her. Evan said his dad had checked the attic a few days earlier and didn't find anything. But his dad had only looked from the hatch with a flashlight. He hadn't climbed all the way in because the attic was mostly insulation and beams. That made me picture the attic hatch upstairs. I had walked under it 100 times and never thought about it. It was just a white square in the ceiling with a little pull cord hanging down. Now I imagined it slightly open. Just enough for an eye. I didn't say that out loud. At 1:23, Chris's phone recorded the next set. It came from the wall behind the TV. 5 knocks again. Knock. 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 But this time, after a pause, there was a 6th. Knock. I can still remember the exact feeling that went through the room. It wasn't panic at first. It was confusion, cold and slow, because it didn't fit the joke anymore. 5 of us. 6 knocks. The 6th one came after the others, like someone had forgotten to include themselves at first, or like they wanted us to notice. Lauren started crying quietly. Not loud, not dramatic. Just tears running down her face while she stared at the TV wall. Chris whispered, "There's someone else." Evan told him to shut up, but his voice cracked. That was the first time I felt something like real danger. Not movie fear. Not campfire story fear. Real physical fear. The kind that makes your mouth go dry and your skin feel too tight. My heart sank into my stomach as the basement door at the top of the stairs gave a soft click, and I realized we had all been looking at the wall while someone, or something, had been near the stairway. We all heard that click. The basement door wasn't locked. It never was. It had probably just shifted in the frame. Probably. Evan stared up the stairs. "Dad." No answer. He called again, louder. Hello? The house above us stayed quiet. Maya grabbed her phone. I'm calling my mom. No, Evan said quickly. Don't freak out yet. Don't freak out, she said. Are you kidding? Chris picked up his phone from the table and played back the recording. We all listened, huddled around that tiny speaker. There was our breathing, the distant rain, and then the knocks. 5. Pause. 1. Hearing it through the phone somehow made it worse. It took away the chance that we had imagined it. Lauren said, "Call your dad." Evan did. No answer. He called his mom. No answer. That made sense. They were at a wedding reception, probably in a loud room, maybe asleep in a hotel. But in that moment, it felt like the whole world had decided not to pick up. Maya called her mom. Her mom answered after several rings, sounding half asleep. Maya tried to explain, but it came out messy. Knocking, basement, Evan's house, 6 knocks, maybe someone inside. I could hear her mom's voice through the phone, sharp with confusion. Are the doors locked? Maya looked at Evan. Evan looked at me. None of us knew. The front door probably was. The back sliding door? Maybe. The side door from the garage? I had no idea. Maya's mom told us to lock the doors and stay together. She said she would call Evan's parents and start driving over. She lived almost 20 minutes away. 20 minutes can feel like nothing during the day. At 1:30 in a house that knocks back, it feels impossible. We decided to go upstairs together and check the doors. I know that sounds stupid. Watching horror movies, you always think you'd be smarter. You think you'd leave immediately or call the police right away. But real fear makes you second-guess everything. You don't want to make the emergency bigger than it is. You don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to be the reason everyone's parents show up because of a squirrel or a loose pipe. So we went upstairs. All 5 of us. Evan went first, holding a baseball bat he kept behind the basement couch. Chris had his phone flashlight on. I was behind them, then Maya and Lauren. The kitchen light was off when we got upstairs. That bothered me because I remembered Evan leaving it on earlier. He insisted he hadn't. Maybe one of us had turned it off without thinking. Maybe the lights looked different because we'd been in the basement. The house smelled like cold pizza and rain. The street looked ordinary through the front windows, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face, and sometimes it wears no face at all. Sometimes it's just a dark window reflecting your own scared expression back at you. Evan checked the front door. Locked. We moved to the sliding glass door in the dining room. Locked. The rain outside blurred the reflection, and for 1 second, I thought I saw someone standing on the deck. Tall, still just beyond the glass. I gasped, and everyone turned. But it was only the patio umbrella, closed and tied, moving slightly in the wind. Everyone got mad at me for scaring them, which was fair. Then we checked the garage door. Unlocked. Evan froze with his hand on the knob. The door led from the kitchen into the garage. His family used it all the time, and apparently they didn't always lock it because the garage door itself stayed closed. He turned the lock slowly. The tiny click sounded too loud. That should have made us feel better. It didn't, because right after Evan locked it, something knocked from the other side. One knock, right against the garage door. Not the big garage door outside. The door Evan had just locked. All 5 of us backed away at once. Maya let out a small scream and clapped a hand over her mouth. Lauren started sobbing harder. Chris whispered something I couldn't understand. Evan held the bat with both hands. "Who's there?" he shouted. No answer. Then the doorknob moved. Not violently. Not like someone trying to break in. It turned gently. Left. Right. Stopped. That was when we finally called 911. Maya was already on the phone with her mom, crying, and I grabbed my phone with hands that barely worked. I remember messing up the passcode twice. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I fumbled with the screen. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. The dispatcher asked for the address. I didn't know Evan's exact house number, and in my panic, I looked at him like he had just become a stranger. He shouted it to me. The The dispatcher told us to get somewhere safe, lock a door between us and whoever was there, and stay on the line. We ran back to the basement. That was our mistake. I still think about it. The front door was closer. We could have run outside. We could have gone to a neighbor. But fear doesn't draw a perfect map. It sends you to the last place that felt safe, even if it's a trap with carpet. We got down the stairs and Evan slammed the basement door behind us. There was no lock on it. He dragged a small bookshelf in front of it, spilling board games and DVDs everywhere. Chris helped him push the couch against the bottom of the stairs, even though it wouldn't stop much. The dispatcher stayed on the phone. I put it on speaker and held it in both hands like that phone was a weapon. She asked if we could see the person. No. Did we hear them? Not at first. Then yes. Footsteps. Above us. Slow. Not heavy enough to be Evan's dad. Not fast enough to be a panicked teenager. Just a calm walk across the kitchen. The footsteps stopped near the basement door. Nobody breathed. Then came 5 knocks on the basement door. Knock. 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 Pause. One more. Knock. Lauren made a sound I'll never forget. It wasn't a scream. It was like all the air had been pushed out of her. The dispatcher asked what was happening. I couldn't answer. My throat closed. Maya whispered, "There's someone at the door." The dispatcher told us officers were on the way. I kept staring at the crack under the basement door at the top of the stairs. There was light from the kitchen beyond it. For a second, nothing moved. Then a shadow crossed the line of light. Someone was standing there. Evan raised the bat, but he looked terrified. Chris had picked up a metal floor lamp, holding it like a spear. Maya and Lauren were backed against the far wall under the tiny basement window. Then a voice came from upstairs. "Evan!" It was a man's voice. Soft, almost friendly. Evan went rigid. "Evan," the voice said again. "Your mom said I could check on you." Nobody moved. The voice was close to the door. Too close. Evan whispered, "I don't know him." The man knocked again. 6 times. Then he said, "There are 6 of us now." I don't remember deciding to move. I just remember turning toward the basement windows. They were small, like I said, narrow rectangles near the ceiling. Too small for an adult to get through easily, but maybe not impossible for us. One of them opened inward. It had a flimsy little latch and a screen. I pointed at it. Chris understood first. He grabbed a chair and shoved it under the window. Evan was still staring at the stairs, bat in hand, but I yelled his name and snapped him out of it. The man upstairs tried the basement door. The bookshelf shifted slightly. Not much. Just enough to make every one of us understand it wouldn't hold. The man didn't bang or kick. That might have been less scary somehow. Instead, he pushed steadily, patiently, like he had all the time in the world. The couch at the bottom of the stairs scraped back an inch. Maya climbed onto the chair and started fumbling with the window latch. Her fingers slipped. She was crying too hard to do it. Lauren helped her, and the latch finally popped open. Cold, rain-smelling air rushed in. The screen wouldn't come out at first. It was stuck. Chris started hitting the frame with the floor lamp. Once. Twice. On the 3rd hit, the screen bent outward and fell into the wet grass outside. The basement door opened maybe 2 inches. We could see part of the man's shoe. Dark boot. Then his fingers curled around the edge of the door. Long fingers. Pale skin. No gloves. Evan screamed at him to get away, but it came out broken. The dispatcher was still talking through the phone on the floor, her voice tiny and unreal. Maya squeezed through the window first. She got stuck at her hips for a second and started panicking. Lauren pushed from below, while Chris pulled from outside after climbing up behind her. Somehow she popped through and fell into the grass. Lauren went next. Then Chris. I was about to climb when the basement door pushed open another few inches, and the bookshelf toppled with a crash. Board games slid down the stairs. The couch held for a second, then shifted. I saw his face through the gap. Only part of it. One eye. Part of a cheek. Wet hair stuck to his forehead. He wasn't smiling. That would almost make the memory easier, because then I could turn him into a monster. He looked calm, empty, like he had been waiting for us to reach this part. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights that came later, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying that face I'd seen through the basement doorway. The calm, empty eye that didn't blink. Evan shoved me toward the window. "Go!" I climbed onto the chair. My shoes slipped on the cushion. I grabbed the window frame, scraping my palms on the rough edge, and pulled myself up. Outside, Chris and Maya grabbed my arms. Behind me, the couch moved with a violent scrape. I looked back. The man was halfway down the stairs. Not running, walking. Evan was still in the basement with the bat. For one awful second, I thought he wasn't going to come. I landed outside in the mud hard enough to knock the wind out of myself. Rain hit my face. The backyard was dark except for the weak basement light spilling out behind us. Maya was screaming for Evan. Chris leaned back into the window yelling, "Come on!" Inside, Evan swung the bat. I heard it hit something with a dull crack, not like in movies, not clean or heroic. More like a desperate kid hitting whatever was closest, because he had no other plan. Then Evan scrambled up onto the chair. The man grabbed his ankle. I saw it happen. A pale hand closed around Evan's leg. Evan screamed and kicked, and Chris reached in, grabbing both his wrists. I grabbed Chris around the waist, and pulled because I didn't know what else to do. Maya and Lauren were screaming. The rain made everything slippery. For a second, Evan was stretched between us and the man in the basement like something in a nightmare. Then his shoe came off. That stupid detail saved him. His foot slipped free, and we all fell backward into the grass with Evan half on top of us, one sock dark with mud. The man appeared at the window a second later. Just his face and one hand on the frame. He looked out at us from inside Evan's basement, and for the first time his expression changed. Not anger, not fear, interest, like we had done something unexpected. Then police sirens sounded from the street. The man disappeared from the window. We ran, not toward the front at first, because we were too disoriented. We ran sideways across the backyard, through wet leaves and mud, toward the neighbor's fence. Lauren slipped and fell, and I pulled her up so hard I almost hurt her arm. We climbed a chain-link fence into the next yard, then another, until porch lights started turning on and a woman in a robe opened her back door and yelled, "What's going on?" We all ran toward her house at once. I must have looked insane. Soaked, muddy, bleeding from one palm, holding a phone that was still connected to 911. The woman pulled us inside and locked the door behind us. Her husband stood in the kitchen holding a flashlight like he had no idea what he was supposed to do with it. Through their front window, I could see police lights flashing blue and red against the wet street. That should have been the moment it ended. It wasn't. The police searched Evan's house. They found the basement door forced open. They found mud on the stairs, even though none of us had come in from outside that way. They found Evan's shoe near the couch. They found the screen in the backyard. But they didn't find the man. Not inside the house. Not in the garage. Not in the backyard. Not in the woods. At first, one officer suggested maybe he had run out before they arrived. That made sense. The back door was unlocked when they checked it, even though Evan swore it had been locked earlier. The garage door was also open. But then they found something in the attic. I didn't see it that night. None of us did. Evan told me later, and his dad confirmed it when my parents came to get me. The attic hatch in the upstairs hallway had scratch marks around the edges, like it had been opened and closed from inside more than once. Up in the attic, tucked between insulation and storage boxes, police found a small flattened space where someone had clearly been hiding. There was a blanket, a half-empty water bottle, candy wrappers, a cheap phone charger plugged into an extension cord that had been run from an outlet in Evan's parents' bedroom, and a notebook. The police didn't tell us everything inside it because we were minors, but Evan eventually found out enough. The notebook had dates, times, names, not full diary entries, more like observations. Boy left 7:10, mother home 8:44, 5 downstairs, 2 upstairs, 5 again, and on the last page, written larger than the rest. 6. They never officially explained who he was or how long he'd been in the house. The police thought he had gotten in through the garage at some point when the family left it open. They believed he had been hiding in the attic and moving around when nobody was home or when people were asleep. Evan's mom had heard knocking the week before because, according to the officer, the attic floor had exposed beams and certain parts connected to the walls in strange ways. A person could tap from up there and make it sound like it came from other rooms. That was the official explanation. A man in the attic, a hidden person, a real person. That should make it less scary, right? It doesn't, because a ghost can haunt a house. But a person has to choose to climb inside it. A person has to lie still above your bedroom while you sleep. A person has to listen to your family talk over dinner. A person has to learn your footsteps, your habits, your names. A person has to knock once for each of you, and then add himself. That's what still gets me. He wasn't haunting the house. He was counting us. Evan's parents put the house up for sale less than 2 months later. They stayed with relatives until it sold. Evan barely talked at school after that. For a while, we were all treated like local celebrities in the worst possible way. People asked us questions in the hallway. Some thought we exaggerated. Some said it was fake. Someone made a joke by knocking 6 times on Evan's locker, and Chris shoved him hard enough to get suspended. Maya started seeing a therapist. Lauren refused to sleep away from home for years. Chris pretended he was fine, but he slept with a chair under his bedroom door handle until graduation. As for me, I changed in smaller ways. I check attic hatches now. I check closets in hotel rooms. I lock doors even when I'm just taking out the trash. I don't like unfinished basements. I don't like crawl spaces. I don't like houses where the garage connects directly to the kitchen. And I hate knocking. Not loud knocking. Loud knocking is almost comforting because it wants to be heard. It's the quiet kind I hate. 1 knock from another room. 2 from a wall. A little tap in the middle of the night that could be pipes, could be settling, could be nothing. Most of the time, it is nothing. That's the problem. You can tell yourself that 100 times, and most nights you'll be right. But one night, you might not be. The last time I spoke to Evan about be right. But one night, you might not be. The last time I spoke to Evan about it, we were 19. We had both come home from college for winter break, and we met at a diner near our old school. It was one of those places with scratched tables, bad coffee, and yellow light that made everyone look tired. I asked him if they ever caught the guy. He shook his head. They had a name they were looking at, he said. Some guy who used to do repair work in the neighborhood. But nothing stuck. Did he know your family? Maybe. My dad didn't think so. My mom thought she recognized him from somewhere. He stared down into his coffee for a while. Then he said something I still think about. The weird part is, after we moved, my mom found out the new owners asked about noises in the house. I looked at him. What kind of noises? He gave me this tired little smile that wasn't really a smile. Knocking. I told him houses make noises. He nodded like he knew that, like he had told himself the same thing too many times. Then he said, yeah, but they said it happened when their kids had friends over. I didn't ask how many knocks. I didn't want to know. I'm not saying the house was haunted. I'm not saying the man came back. I'm not even saying the new owners heard the same thing we did. Maybe old wood shifts in patterns. Maybe rain makes gutters knock against siding. Maybe when you're scared, your brain connects dots that aren't there. That's the reasonable answer. And I try to be reasonable. But sometimes late at night, when my apartment is quiet and the world outside feels far away, I think about that basement. I think about 5 of us sitting under the yellow lights, laughing too loudly because we didn't want to admit we were scared. Then I think about the 6th knock, the one that came after the pause, the one that wasn't for any of us. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing someone can be close enough to count you before you even know they're there. Story 4. For one awful second, I thought he wasn't going to come. I landed outside in the mud hard enough to knock the wind out of myself. Rain hit my face. The backyard was dark except for the weak basement light spilling out behind us. Maya was screaming for Evan. Chris leaned back into the window, yelling, "Come on!" Inside, Evan swung the bat. I heard it hit something with a dull crack, not like in movies, not clean or heroic. More like a desperate kid hitting whatever was closest because he had no other plan. Then Evan scrambled up onto the chair. The man grabbed his ankle. I saw it happen. A pale hand closed around Evan's leg. Evan screamed and kicked, and Chris reached in, grabbing both his wrists. I grabbed Chris around the waist and pulled because I didn't know what else to do. Maya and Lauren were screaming. The rain made everything slippery. For a second, Evan was stretched between us and the man in the basement like something in a nightmare. Then his shoe came off. That stupid detail saved him. His foot slipped free, and we all fell backward into the grass with Evan half on top of us, one sock dark with mud. The man appeared at the window a second later. Just his face and one hand on the frame. He looked out at us from inside Evan's basement, and for the first time his expression changed. Not anger, not fear, interest, like we had done something unexpected. Then police sirens sounded from the street. The man disappeared from the window. We ran, not toward the front at first, because we were too disoriented. We ran sideways across the backyard, through wet leaves and mud, toward the neighbor's fence. Lauren slipped and fell, and I pulled her up so hard I almost hurt her arm. We climbed a chain-link fence into the next yard, then another, until porch lights started turning on and a woman in a robe opened her back door and yelled, "What's going on?" We all ran toward her house at once. I must have looked insane. Soaked, muddy, bleeding from one palm, holding a phone that was still connected to 911. The woman pulled us inside and locked the door behind us. Her husband stood in the kitchen holding a flashlight like he had no idea what he was supposed to do with it. Through their front window, I could see police lights flashing blue and red against the wet street. That should have been the moment it ended. It wasn't. The police searched Evan's house. They found the basement door forced open. They found mud on the stairs, even though none of us had come in from outside that way. They found Evan's shoe near the couch. They found the screen in the backyard. But they didn't find the man. Not inside the house. Not in the garage. Not in the backyard. Not in the woods. At first, one officer suggested maybe he had run out before they arrived. That made sense. The back door was unlocked when they checked it, even though Evan swore it had been locked earlier. The garage door was also open. But then they found something in the attic. I didn't see it that night. None of us did. Evan told me later, and his dad confirmed it when my parents came to get me. The attic hatch in the upstairs hallway had scratch marks around the edges, like it had been opened and closed from inside more than once. Up in the attic, tucked between insulation and storage boxes, police found a small flattened space where someone had clearly been hiding. There was a blanket, a half-empty water bottle, candy wrappers, a cheap phone charger plugged into an extension cord that had been run from an outlet in Evan's parents' bedroom, and a notebook. The police didn't tell us everything inside it because we were minors, but Evan eventually found out enough. The notebook had dates, times, names, not full diary entries, more like observations. Boy left 7:10, mother home 8:44, 5 downstairs, 2 upstairs, 5 again, and on the last page, written larger than the rest, 6. They never officially explained who he was or how long he'd been in the house. The police thought he had gotten in through the garage at some point when the family left it open. They believed he had been hiding in the attic and moving around when nobody was home or when people were asleep. Evan's mom had heard knocking the week before because, according to the officer, the attic floor had exposed beams and certain parts connected to the walls in strange ways. A person could tap from up there and make it sound like it came from other rooms. That was the official explanation. A man in the attic, a hidden person, a real person. That should make it less scary, right? It doesn't, because a ghost can haunt a house. But a person has to choose to climb inside it. A person has to lie still above your bedroom while you sleep. A person has to listen to your family talk over dinner. A person has to learn your footsteps, your habits, your names. A person has to knock once for each of you. and then add himself. That's what still gets me. He wasn't haunting the house. He was counting us. Evan's parents put the house up for sale less than 2 months later. They stayed with relatives until it sold. Evan barely talked at school after that. For a while, we were all treated like local celebrities in the worst possible way. People asked us questions in the hallway. Some thought we exaggerated. Some said it was fake. Someone made a joke by knocking 6 times on Evan's locker, and Chris shoved him hard enough to get suspended. Maya started seeing a therapist. Lauren refused to sleep away from home for years. Chris pretended he was fine, but he slept with a chair under his bedroom door handle until graduation. As for me, I changed in smaller ways. I check attic hatches now. I check closets in hotel rooms. I lock doors even when I'm just taking out the trash. I don't like unfinished basements. I don't like crawl spaces. I don't like houses where the garage connects directly to the kitchen. And I hate knocking. Not loud knocking. Loud knocking is almost comforting because it wants to be heard. It's the quiet kind I hate. 1 knock from another room, 2 from a wall. A little tap in the middle of the night that could be pipes, could be settling, could be nothing. Most of the time, it is nothing. That's the problem. You can tell yourself that 100 times, and most nights you'll be right. But one night, you might not be. The last time I spoke to Evan about be right, but one night, you might not be. The last time I spoke to Evan about it, we were 19. We had both come home from college for winter break, and we met at a diner near our old school. It was one of those places with scratched tables, bad coffee, and yellow light that made everyone look tired. I asked him if they ever caught the guy. He shook his head. They had a name they were looking at, he said. Some guy who used to do repair work in the neighborhood. But nothing stuck. Did he know your family? Maybe. My dad didn't think so. My mom thought she recognized him from somewhere. He stared down into his coffee for a while. Then he said something I still think about. The weird part is, after we moved, my mom found out the new owners asked about noises in the house. I looked at him. What kind of noises? He gave me this tired little smile that wasn't really a smile. Knocking. I told him houses make noises. He nodded like he knew that, like he had told himself the same thing too many times. Then he said, yeah, but they said it happened when their kids had friends over. I didn't ask how many knocks. I didn't want to know. I'm not saying the house was haunted. I'm not saying the man came back. I'm not even saying the new owners heard the same thing we did. Maybe old wood shifts and patterns. Maybe rain makes gutters knock against siding. Maybe when you're scared, your brain connects dots that aren't there. That's the reasonable answer. And I try to be reasonable. But sometimes late at night, when my apartment is quiet and the world outside feels far away, I think about that basement. I think about 5 of us sitting under the yellow lights, laughing too loudly because we didn't want to admit we were scared. Then I think about the 6th knock, the one that came after the pause, the one that wasn't for any of us. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing someone can be close enough to count you before you even know they're there. Story 5. Have you ever heard your mother call your name from a room you knew she wasn't in? Not like a memory, not like a dream. I mean clearly, softly, close enough that your whole body reacts before your brain has time to catch up. That happened to me when I was 22, during a weekend trip with 4 friends in a small town in northern Pennsylvania. And for a long time afterward, I told myself there had to be a normal explanation for it. A prank, a speaker hidden somewhere, maybe some weird echo from a phone downstairs. I wanted it to be anything except what it felt like in that moment. Because the voice wasn't just similar to my mom's. It was her voice. The way she said my name when she was trying not to wake the whole house. The way she used the shorter version of it that only my family used. And it was coming from behind a locked basement door we had been told, very clearly, not to open. My name is Mara. At the time, I was living in Scranton and working part-time at a vet clinic while finishing my last year of college. My life back then was about as normal as it gets. Early shifts, cheap coffee, assignments due at midnight, and pretending I had a better sleep schedule than I actually did. My friend group was small. There was Lena, who I'd known since freshman year. Her boyfriend, Tyler, who was loud in a harmless way. My roommate, Sophie, who was the kind of person who packed snacks for everyone like she was preparing for a natural disaster. And then there was Josh, Tyler's cousin, who I didn't know that well but had hung out with a few times. The whole trip was Lena's idea. Her birthday was coming up, and instead of a bar or a party, she wanted a quiet weekend away. She found an old farmhouse rental about 2.5 hours north, near a little town surrounded by trees and empty roads. The listing showed a porch, a fire pit, 3 bedrooms, and a kitchen with those old yellow countertops that somehow make everything feel warmer. It looked harmless, boring even. The kind of place where the scariest thing should have been bad Wi-Fi or a spider in the shower. We drove up on a Friday afternoon in October. The weather was cold but not freezing, with that damp fall smell in the air, like wet leaves and chimney smoke. By the time we got there, the sun was already low, and the trees around the property looked almost black against the sky. The house sat at the end of a gravel driveway. It was bigger than it looked in the pictures, with white siding, a sagging porch, and 2 windows upstairs that reflected the sunset like dull orange eyes. I remember Sophie saying, "Okay, it's either cozy or haunted." Tyler laughed and said, "That's how you know it's a good rental." The host was there when we arrived, which we weren't expecting. His name was Edwin. He looked maybe late 50s, tall and thin, with gray hair combed straight back and a green flannel shirt buttoned all the way to his neck. He had this very polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He shook Tyler's hand first, then Lena's, then mine. His hand was cold. "Glad you made it before dark," he said. "Roads get confusing out here." He showed us around the house. The inside was old but clean. Creaky floors, low ceilings, family photos taken down from the walls but faded rectangles still showing where they used to hang. The living room had a brown couch, a rocking chair, and an old TV that looked like it weighed 200 pounds. The kitchen smelled faintly like bleach and cinnamon. Everything seemed normal until we got to the hallway near the back of the house. There was a door there, painted the same white as the walls, with a heavy deadbolt above the regular doorknob. The door had no label, but there were scratches around the frame like something had been dragged against it more than once. Edwin stopped in front of it and turned toward us. "This is the basement," he said. Nobody said anything. "It stays locked," he continued. "Nobody goes down there." Tyler immediately grinned, because of course he did. "What's down there?" Edwin didn't smile. "Old utilities. Storage. Nothing for guests." The way he said it made the hallway feel colder. Lena gave Tyler a look, the kind that said don't be annoying, and said, "No worries. We won't mess with it." Edwin nodded, but he didn't move right away. He looked at each of us, one by one, like he wanted to make sure we understood. Then he said, "Even if you hear anything from down there, don't open it." That got my attention. Sophie gave a nervous laugh. "What would we hear?" Edwin looked at her. "Pipes," he said. "House noises. Sometimes animals get under the foundation. This place is old." It sounded reasonable when he explained it. Still, something about that extra warning stuck with me. Even if you hear anything. Not if. Even if. After he left, we joked about it, because that's what people do when something makes them uncomfortable, and they don't want to admit it. Tyler stood by the basement door and put on a deep movie trailer voice. "Whatever you do, do not open the forbidden door." Lena smacked his arm. "Can we please not get kicked out before we even unpack?" Josh was quieter than the rest of us. He looked at the door for a second too long, then said, "That guy was weird." Sophie said, "Most rental hosts are weird. They either don't talk at all, or they act like you're borrowing their firstborn child." I laughed, and just like that, the strange feeling softened. For the first few hours, everything was fine. We unpacked, made frozen pizzas, played music from Lena's speaker, and sat around the kitchen table playing cards. The heating system clanked every once in a while. The pipes made little knocks in the walls. The wind pushed dead leaves across the porch in dry scratching sounds. Normal old house stuff. Around 10, we went outside to the fire pit. The backyard opened into a line of trees, and beyond that was nothing. No neighbors close by. No streetlights. just woods and a narrow gravel road disappearing into the dark. The sky was clear enough that we could see stars. I remember thinking it was actually kind of perfect. That's the part one hates looking back on. How ordinary it felt. How safe. How we were all wrapped in blankets, laughing at dumb stories, eating chips from the bag, completely unaware that something had already started. The first odd thing happened a little before midnight. I went inside to use the bathroom and grab another hoodie. The house was quiet after being outside with everyone talking. I could hear the refrigerator hum in the kitchen and the distant pop of the fire through the closed windows. As I walked down the hallway, I passed the basement door, and from behind it, very faintly, I heard a phone vibrate. Not a ring, a vibration, like a cell phone buzzing against a wooden shelf. I stopped. It buzzed again. My first thought was that one of us had left a phone somewhere nearby, maybe on the hallway table or in a jacket pocket. I checked the little table by the back door. Nothing. I checked my own hoodie pocket. Nothing. Then it buzzed a third time, and this time I was sure it was coming from behind the basement door. I leaned closer without touching it. Silence. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, feeling stupid. Then Tyler opened the back door and yelled, "Mara, you alive in there?" I jumped so hard I almost hit the wall. "Yeah," I called back. "Coming." I told myself it was nothing. Some old appliance. Some pipe vibrating. Houses make sounds. That's what I kept repeating in my head. I didn't mention it when I went back outside. The second thing happened about an hour later. We had let the fire burn down, and everyone was tired in that cozy way where nobody wants to admit they're ready for bed. Josh was scrolling through his phone, trying to get a signal. Lena and Tyler were arguing about whether raccoons could open coolers. Sophie was half asleep in a lawn chair with her hood pulled up. Then from the direction of the house, we heard a knock. One clear knock. Not loud, just enough. We all stopped talking. Tyler looked over his shoulder. "Did someone leave the door open?" "No," Lena said. "I shut it." A few seconds passed. Then another knock. This one sounded like it came from inside the house, from somewhere near the back hallway. Sophie sat up. "I hate that." Tyler grabbed the flashlight from the ground and stood up. I said, "Don't be stupid." He looked at me. "I'm just checking the door." We all went with him, because nobody wanted to stay outside alone after that. Inside, the house was still. The back door was locked. The windows were shut. The hallway was empty. But the basement door looked different to me. I can't explain it exactly. It was the same door, same deadbolt, same scratches in the paint. But now that we were all staring at it, it had presence. Like it had been waiting for attention. Tyler walked over and pressed his ear to it. Lena hissed, "Tyler." He held up a hand. For once, he wasn't smiling. "What?" Josh asked. Tyler stepped back. "I thought I heard music." Sophie said, "Don't say that." "I'm serious," Tyler said. "Like, really quiet music." We all listened. Nothing. Then Josh said, "Edwin said there were pipes." "Pipes don't play music," Sophie said. Lena rubbed her forehead. "Okay, everyone's tired. We're getting creeped out because of what he said. That's all." And honestly, that explanation made sense. Sometimes your brain fills in blanks when you're already nervous. The host told us not to open the basement door, so now every creak and knock felt connected to it. We went to bed around 1. The sleeping arrangements were simple. Lena and Tyler took the master bedroom downstairs, near the front of the house. Sophie and I took the larger upstairs room with 2 twin beds. Josh took the small upstairs room across the hall. The upstairs hallway had one weak ceiling light that flickered every few seconds, so we turned it off and used phone flashlights instead. Our room smelled like old wood and laundry detergent. There was a slanted ceiling, a dresser with one missing handle, and one window facing the backyard. Sophie fell asleep almost immediately. I didn't. The house was louder at night. Every sound carried. The heat turning on sounded like someone dragging a chair across the floor. The branches scraped the siding in slow, patient strokes. Somewhere downstairs, something clicked every few minutes. I lay on my back staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about the basement. At 2:13 a.m., my phone lit up. A text from my mom. Are you there safe? I forgot to ask earlier. Love you. I smiled a little. That was completely like her. She always remembered to worry hours after the thing she was worried about had already happened. I typed back, yes, safe. Going to sleep. Love you too. A minute later, she replied, good. Lock the doors. I stared at that message longer than I should have. There was nothing weird about it. It was a normal mom thing to say. Still, because of everything that had happened, it made my stomach tighten. I put my phone face down and tried to sleep. I must have drifted off at some point, because the next thing I remember is waking up with my heart already racing. The room was dark except for a thin strip of moonlight coming through the curtains. Sophie was still asleep, facing the wall. For a few seconds, I didn't know what had woken me. Then I heard it, a voice downstairs. Soft, barely above a whisper. Tyler. I froze. It was a woman's voice. Not loud, not panicked, just gentle. Tyler, honey. My first thought was that Lena was talking in her sleep downstairs. Then the voice came again. Tyler. And from across the hall, Josh's door opened. I heard his floorboard creak. I sat up slowly. Sophie, I whispered. She didn't move. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and listened. Downstairs, another voice called. This time it was a man. Josh. The floor seemed to tilt under me. Across the hall, Josh whispered, Dad? I stood up so fast my knee hit the bed frame. Sophie, I said louder, shaking her shoulder. She woke up confused and annoyed. What? Listen. We both went still. For a moment there was only the wind outside and the ticking of the old radiator. Then from downstairs, very softly, came a woman's voice. Sophie. Sophie's face changed. I will never forget it. Sleepiness vanished from her eyes like someone had slapped her awake. The voice came again. Sophie, come here. Her lips parted. That's my mom, she whispered. My skin went cold. No, I said. No, it isn't. But even as I said it, I knew exactly why she believed it. Because the voice was not some cartoon impersonation. It had rhythm. It had warmth. It had the tiny imperfections that make a person's voice real. Sophie's mom had this soft, breathy way of saying her name, almost like sophomore, and that was exactly what came from downstairs. Soph, come downstairs. Across the hall, Josh said louder now, Who's there? Lena's bedroom door downstairs opened. We heard Tyler say something, but I couldn't make out the words. Then another voice came. A woman older, shaky with concern. Lena? Lena screamed. Not a horror movie scream. Just a sharp burst of fear, like someone had pulled it out of her. Tyler shouted, What the hell? I stepped into the hallway. Sophie grabbed my sleeve so hard her nails pinched my skin. Josh was standing outside his room in a t-shirt and sweatpants, phone flashlight in his hand. His face was pale. That was my dad, he said. From downstairs, Tyler yelled, Everyone stay where you are. His voice was trying to sound strong, but it cracked at the end. Then the basement door clicked. Just once. A small metallic sound. The kind of lock makes when pressure shifts against it. The entire house went quiet. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I fumbled for my phone. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I called 911. No service. Of course. The listing had said Wi-Fi included, but the Wi-Fi had been spotty all night. I opened my phone settings with shaking fingers and tried to connect. The network showed one bar, then disappeared. Downstairs, Tyler said, Lena, get back. Then came a voice that made every muscle in my body lock. Mara. It was my mother. Not like someone pretending. Not like a recording played through a bad speaker. My mother. Soft. Worried. Close. Mara, open the door. My heart sank into my stomach as the hallway seemed to shrink around me, and I realized someone knew my name, knew her voice, and knew exactly which part of me to reach for. Sophie started crying silently beside me. Josh whispered, How is it doing that? Nobody answered. The voice came again. Mara, sweetheart. It's cold down here. That almost broke me, because my mom calls me sweetheart when she's upset. Not every day, not casually, only when something is wrong. And for half a second, some stupid, animal part of my brain wanted to go down there. That's what still scares me the most. Not that I believed my mother was in the basement. I didn't. But hearing her voice made my body want to obey anyway. Sometimes fear doesn't feel like screaming. Sometimes it feels like your brain splitting into two pieces, one logical and one ancient, and the ancient part is louder. Lena came running up the stairs with Tyler right behind her. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe. "That was my grandma," she said. "That was my grandma." Tyler was holding a fire poker from the living room. His face had gone gray. "Everyone in one room," he said. We went into mine and Sophie's room and locked the door. Tyler shoved the dresser in front of it, which took all three of us because the floor was uneven and the dresser caught on the boards. Josh kept trying 911 from different corners of the room. "No service," he kept saying. "Nothing. I've got nothing." Lena was calling her grandma over and over, but the calls wouldn't go through. Sophie was curled on the floor, shaking, whispering, "That was her. That was her." I kept looking at my own phone, waiting for Wi-Fi to come back. Downstairs, the voices started again. Not all at once. One by one. Tyler. Lena. Josh. Sophomore. Mara. Sometimes they were our parents. Sometimes they were grandparents. Once, I heard what sounded like Tyler's little sister, high and sleepy, saying, "Ty, come help me." Tyler covered his ears and whispered, "Nope. Nope. Nope." The voices didn't yell. That would have been easier somehow. They stayed calm, patient, like they had all night. Then the doorknob to our bedroom turned. Very slowly. Nobody moved. The dresser pressed against the door, and the knob turned as far as it could, then stopped. A soft knock came from the other side. 3 taps. Then my mother's voice whispered through the door. "Mara, why are you hiding?" I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, to tell myself this was some elaborate prank, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Tyler raised the fire poker. Josh mouthed, "Window." I looked toward it. The room was on the 2nd floor, but the roof of the porch wrapped around part of the house. If we could climb out, maybe we could get down. Maybe. But the window was old and painted shut. Josh and Tyler tried to lift it without making noise. It didn't budge. The knocking came again. This time, Sophie's mom. "Soph, open up. You're scaring me." Sophie made this broken sound and pressed her hands over her mouth. Lena whispered, "Please stop. Please." The voice outside changed instantly. "Lena?" Her grandma's voice. "Baby, I fell. Open the door." Lena doubled over like she'd been punched. Tyler grabbed her shoulders. "It's not her. Look at me. It is not her." And then from right outside the door, in a voice none of us recognized, someone laughed. It was quiet, just one breathy little laugh. That was when we understood it wasn't some malfunction. It wasn't house noises. It wasn't an echo. There was someone in the house with us. Someone had been downstairs. Someone had unlocked the basement. Or worse, someone had never been locked in at all. Josh found a metal nail file in Sophie's makeup bag and started scraping at the painted window seams. Tyler helped with a pocket knife. I kept checking my phone, pacing in tiny steps because I felt like if I stopped moving, I would lose it. At 2:41 a.m., one bar appeared. I hit 911 again. It rang once, then dropped. I almost cried. I moved to the window and held my phone up against the glass. One bar. I dialed again. This time it connected. 911, what is your emergency? I started whispering so fast I could barely understand myself. We're at a rental house. Someone is inside. They're outside our bedroom door. We need police. Please. The operator asked for the address. I didn't know it. That was the worst feeling. Being trapped somewhere and realizing you don't even know where you are. I opened the rental app, but it wouldn't load. Lena, somehow, remembered the road name from the listing. Creek Hollow Road. House number something like 118 or 181. None of us were sure. The operator told me to stay on the line. Then the call cut out. I stared at the screen. Call failed. Outside the bedroom door, the hallway floor creaked. Then the voice came again. Not my mother this time. Edwin, the host. "Kids," he said softly. "Open the door. You're making this worse." Nobody breathed. His voice was normal, calm, almost disappointed. Tyler whispered, "He's here." The doorknob rattled hard. The dresser jumped. Sophie screamed into her hands. Tyler yelled, "Get away from the door." Edwin's voice lowered. "You were told not to open the basement door." Lena shouted back, "We didn't." Silence. Then he said, "Someone did." The way he said it made my stomach turn. Like he already had a story prepared. Like we were the problem. Like whatever happened next would somehow be our fault. The doorknob rattled again, harder. Josh and Tyler finally got the window loose. It shrieked as it opened, wood tearing away from old paint. Cold air rushed in. The sound made the person in the hallway stop. Then the door slammed against the dresser. Once. Twice. The dresser scraped back an inch. "Go," Tyler said. Josh climbed out first, awkward and terrified, lowering himself onto the porch roof. Then Sophie. She slipped halfway through, and I grabbed her arm so hard she cried out. Lena went next, shaking so badly Josh had to pull her from outside. I was halfway through the window when the bedroom door burst open enough for a pale hand to slide through the gap. I don't remember screaming, but Lena says I did. Tyler shoved the dresser back with his shoulder, and the hand disappeared. The door hit again. I tumbled onto the porch roof, landing on my side hard enough to knock the air out of me. The shingles were damp and slick under my palms. Sophie was already crawling toward the edge. Behind me, Tyler climbed out last, still holding the fire poker. For a second, all 5 of us were on that roof like scared animals, barefoot or in socks, looking down at the dark yard below. It wasn't a huge drop, but in the moment it felt impossible. Josh went first. He hung from the gutter and dropped, landing badly, but staying on his feet. Then he helped Sophie. Lena followed, crying the whole time. I dropped next and hit the ground on my knees, pain shooting up my legs. Tyler landed last. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. We ran toward the gravel driveway. That's when the porch light came on. Not from motion. Someone inside had switched it on. The backyard lit up in a weak yellow glow, and I looked back. There was a figure standing in the upstairs bedroom window. Not Edwin. At least, I don't think it was. The person was shorter, thin, wearing what looked like a dark hoodie. Their face was mostly hidden behind the reflection on the glass, but I could see their eyes. They were calm, empty, watching us like we were leaving too soon. Even after escaping, even with the hope of reaching the road ahead, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. We made it to the driveway, but Tyler stopped suddenly. His car was there, but all 4 tires were flat. Not low. Flat. Slashed or punctured, though none of us got close enough to check. Lena made this helpless sound. "No, no, no," Josh said, "Keep moving." We ran down the gravel road in the dark. No coats. No bags. No keys except Tyler's useless car key. My socks tore on the stones within minutes, and my feet went numb. The road twisted through trees, and the house disappeared behind us almost immediately. At one point, Sophie fell. Tyler pulled her up. She kept saying, I can't, and Josh kept saying, "You can. You have to." I tried 911 again while running, holding the phone up like that would help. No service. Behind us, somewhere far back on the road, an engine started. We all heard it. Headlights appeared between the trees. Tyler grabbed Lena's arm and pulled her off the road. We stumbled into the woods, slipping on leaves and mud, crouching behind a cluster of trees as the vehicle rolled slowly past. It was Edwin's pickup. Same dark green truck from earlier. It moved with its headlights on low, slow enough that whoever was driving was looking. We held our breath as it passed. I could see the side mirror. I could hear the tires crunching gravel. Then it stopped, right beside where we were hiding. The engine idled. Nobody moved. My lungs burned. A window rolled down. For a few seconds, there was only the engine and the wind. Then my mother's voice came from the truck. Mara, I closed my eyes. Mara, come out. Sophie's nails dug into my hand. The voice repeated, softer now. Sweetheart, please. I'm scared. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood, but I didn't move. Then Edwin's real voice said, They always think they're clever. The window rolled up. The truck moved on. We stayed in the woods until the tail lights disappeared. After that, we didn't go back to the road. We moved through the trees, half walking, half crawling, trying to keep parallel to it. It felt like hours, but it was probably 20 minutes. Eventually, Josh spotted a mailbox at the edge of another property. A small house sat back from the road with one porch light on. We ran to it and banged on the door like lunatics. An older man answered with a baseball bat in one hand and his phone in the other. His wife stood behind him in a robe. We must have looked insane, muddy, shaking, barefoot, crying. Tyler immediately said, Please call the police. Someone is chasing us. The man didn't ask a bunch of questions. He just opened the door and said, Get inside. That couple saved us. I don't know how else to say it. Their names were Harold and Denise. They locked the door behind us, gave us blankets, and called 911 from a landline. Harold stood by the front window with the bat until the police arrived. About 15 minutes later, we saw lights flash across the walls. Police cars. Real ones. I have never felt relief like that in my life. But even then, it didn't feel over. 2 deputies came in first, then another. We told them everything in pieces, talking over each other, shivering so badly Denise made tea none of us could drink. At first, I could tell they weren't sure what to think. 5 college-age people in a rental house, scared by sounds in the night, claiming voices called them by name. It sounded ridiculous. Then Harold told them he'd seen the green pickup pass his house twice in the last half hour. Slow, lights dimmed. That changed their faces. The deputies went to the rental property. We stayed at Harold and Denise's house until nearly dawn. When the officers came back, they separated us and asked us more questions. What did the house look like? Had we opened the basement? Did anyone else know we were staying there? Had we posted about the trip online? That last question mattered. Lena had posted an Instagram story when we arrived. A picture of the porch. The location tag wasn't exact, but it showed the town. Tyler had commented something stupid on it. Sophie had posted a picture of the fire pit with all our names tagged. Normal stuff. Stuff nobody thinks about. One deputy, a woman named Carver, asked to see our phones. She scrolled through the posts, then through the rental listing, her expression getting tighter. Finally, she said, The man you met is not the registered host. The actual host was listed as E. Warner, but the profile picture was old and blurry. The account had been active for years, with decent reviews. The real Edwin Warner, they later found out, had been in a nursing facility since spring after a stroke. His nephew had access to the property. The man we met was not Edwin. His name was Russell Warner, and the basement was not just storage. Police found a cot down there, food wrappers, a laptop, several phones, small speakers, a cheap microphone, a voice-changing app, printed screenshots from our social media accounts. They also found a notebook with our names written in it. Beside each name were notes. Mara, mother, soft voice, sweetheart. Sophie, mom calls her soft. Tyler, younger sister. Lena, grandmother, birthday weekend. Josh, father, strained relationship. I didn't see the notebook myself. Deputy Carver told me enough. More than I wanted to know. They believed Russell had been watching guests for a while. Maybe not every group. Maybe only certain ones. He had access to the rental messages, the property, possibly even old security cameras that weren't disclosed in the listing. The phones in the basement had recordings pulled from public videos. Parents speaking in birthday clips. Tagged family posts. Old voicemail audio from one of our phones, somehow backed up or shared in a way I still don't fully understand. Some of the voices were recordings, some were altered live through software. That part should have made me feel better. It didn't, because knowing how he did it didn't change what it felt like to hear my mother beg me from behind a door. They didn't catch him that night. The green truck was found abandoned 2 roads over. The house was empty by the time police searched it. The basement door was open. The back door was open. Our bags were still upstairs. Tyler's tires had been punctured with some kind of awl or screwdriver, but the tool was never found. For 3 weeks, I slept with the lights on. Actually, sleep is generous. I passed out when my body couldn't stay awake anymore. Every creak in my apartment became footsteps. Every vibration from my phone made my chest tighten. I stopped answering calls from unknown numbers. I stopped posting online almost completely. My mom drove up the day after it happened. When she hugged me, I cried in a way I hadn't cried since I was a kid. Then she said, "Sweetheart, you're safe now." And I flinched. She noticed. I saw it hurt her, even though she tried to hide it. That was one of the worst parts. He didn't just scare us for one night. He took voices that meant safety and made them feel dangerous. Lena broke up with Tyler a few months later, not because of the trip exactly, but because everything after it was hard. Sophie moved back home for a semester. Josh stopped talking to most of us, though I heard through Tyler that he started therapy. As for Russell Warner, he was arrested almost 2 months later in Ohio after trying to use a fake name at a motel. The case didn't become some huge national news story. There was a short article. Man arrested after allegedly harassing rental guests. That was the phrase they used. Harassing. Like he had sent annoying texts. Like he hadn't stood outside our bedroom door using our family's voices to lure us out. He took a plea deal. I won't pretend I understand all the legal details, because I don't. I know there were charges for stalking, unlawful surveillance, breaking and entering, and a few other things. I know the rental platform removed the listing. I know the real property owner claimed he didn't know what his nephew had been doing. Maybe that's true. Maybe not. I don't think about him every day anymore. That would be giving him too much. But there are certain things that still pull me back. A voice through a wall, a door with a deadbolt, a basement in any house, even a clean finished one with carpet and a TV. Sometimes my mom still calls me by the name he used that night, and I have to remind myself where I am. Years have passed now. I'm older. I live in a different city. I have better locks, cameras by my door, and I don't post where I am until after I've left. When I stay in a rental, I check every room, every closet, every locked door. I read reviews like I'm searching for evidence. People tell me that sounds paranoid. Maybe it is. But paranoia is just what people call caution when nothing has happened to them yet. The thing I keep coming back to is how normal everything looked. The farmhouse, the porch, the fire pit, the host with his polite little smile. Nothing about it screamed danger. There was no creepy music, no warning sign, no moment where we all understood we should leave before nightfall. The house was quiet. The town was quiet. The street looked ordinary, calm, even comforting. And behind one locked door, someone was waiting with our names in a notebook. So when people ask me what the scariest part was, they expect me to say the voices, or the door handle turning, or seeing that face in the upstairs window. But it wasn't any of that. The scariest part was how close it came to working. Because for 1 second, when I heard my mother call my name from downstairs, every bit of common sense in me went quiet. And I almost answered.